Arrogance has a way of catching up with those who wield it carelessly. Some people believe they can say whatever they want, hide behind a camera, and assume their words will never come back to haunt them. They mistake their platform for power, their audience for a shield, and their influence for immunity. But there comes a moment when reality breaks through the illusion, exposing the recklessness for what it truly is. There's a certain kind of confidence that turns into hubris, a belief that because one has a microphone, they are above consequence. This mentality fosters an attitude where facts are discarded in favor of narratives, where attacks become more about spectacle than substance. It's an approach that thrives in an environment that encourages controversy, rewarding those who push boundaries for the sake of attention. The louder the voice, the more dramatic the delivery, the greater the reward, or so they believe. The problem with this mindset is that it assumes there are no limits, no lines that can't be crossed. It ignores the reality that while an audience may cheer today, they can turn tomorrow. It forgets that respect isn't given just because someone is on television. It's earned through integrity, fairness, and an ability to engage in meaningful discussion rather than resorting to cheap shots and sensationalism. For a long time, this kind of behavior went unchecked. It was normalized, encouraged even, as long as it brought in views and ratings. But the danger of relying on shock value is that eventually the shock loses its effect. When someone keeps escalating, pushing further each time, they inevitably reach a point where they step too far over the line. They begin to believe they are untouchable, that no matter what they say, they will be protected by their platform. But arrogance blinds. It convinces people that their past success guarantees future immunity. It tricks them into thinking that their status means they are above reproach, that no backlash will ever be strong enough to matter. That's when the mistakes start happening, not because they are accidents, but because the person making them no longer believes they can be mistakes. They see themselves as the ones who decide what is right and wrong, who gets criticized, and who gets praised. When arrogance collides with reality, it's never a slow unraveling. It happens suddenly, without warning, in a way that leaves the person scrambling to make sense of what went wrong. They assume they can walk the same path they always have, say the same kinds of things, play by the same rules they wrote for themselves. But there comes a moment when they push just a little too far, when they assume one insult too many will go unnoticed. And when the response comes, it is swift. The very platform that once provided security now becomes the stage for their reckoning. The audience that once cheered now turns critical, dissecting every word, every past remark, every pattern of behavior that had previously been overlooked. Suddenly, those who once stood behind them begin distancing themselves, unwilling to be caught in the storm. This moment is not about a single misstep. It's about a pattern finally catching up. It's about the realization that power built on arrogance is fragile. That influence used recklessly is not real strength. It's about learning, too late, that words have consequences, and that even those who believe they are above accountability will eventually find themselves answering for what they've said. There is a certain strength that comes not from the volume of one's voice, but from the clarity of one's words. It is a power that does not rely on theatrics, nor on the need to dominate a conversation through aggression or mockery. Instead, it stems from confidence, real confidence, built on knowledge, experience, and an unshakable belief in truth. It is the kind of strength that doesn't need to seek attention because it commands respect naturally. When faced with hostility, some people react with emotion, allowing frustration to dictate their response. But true composure is found in those who understand that dignity speaks louder than outrage. A well-placed remark, spoken with precision, can dismantle an argument more effectively than any outburst. It is the difference between reacting and responding, between being provoked and remaining in control. In moments where others might stumble, there are those who refuse to be rattled. They recognize when an attack is meant to provoke, when it is designed not to engage in real discussion, but to create a spectacle. Instead of taking the bait, they choose a different approach. They wait, they listen, and when the moment is right, they strike, not with hostility, but with undeniable truth. There is something incredibly powerful about watching someone take an insult and turn it into an opportunity. not by responding in kind, not by lowering themselves to the level of the attacker, but by using the very weight of the attack against them. It is a moment that exposes the weakness in an argument without ever having to resort to the same tactics. It starts with a calm demeanor, an unwavering presence that makes it clear they are not shaken. They don't rush to defend themselves out of desperation. They allow the words to settle, to be fully heard. And then, with deliberate precision, they respond. There is no hesitation, no flustered reaction, only facts, delivered with the kind of confidence that cannot be faked. What makes such a response so powerful is that it does not rely on spectacle. It is not about playing to an audience or trying to win over a crowd with theatrics. It is about substance, about ensuring that every word spoken is backed by truth. And when truth is spoken with conviction, it leaves no room for further debate. There is a shift in energy that happens in moments like these. It is almost imperceptible at first, a change in posture, a realization setting in, an audience that was once amused now growing silent. Because when faced with undeniable truth, there is nowhere to go. No amount of deflection or misdirection can change the facts, and no attempt to twist the narrative can undo what has just been made clear. In an instant, the dynamic changes. The attempt to belittle or discredit no longer holds weight. The one who tried to control the conversation now finds themselves struggling to regain footing, and the person who was meant to be on the defensive is instead standing firm, unmoved, and in complete control. It is a masterclass in restraint, in intelligence, in knowing when to speak and how to say exactly what needs to be said. There is no need for personal attacks, no need to raise one's voice, no need for anything other than the simple, undeniable strength of truth. Because when truth is spoken with conviction, it does not need embellishment. It stands on its own. In the world of media, there is often a fine line between controversy and consequence. For years, many have walked that line with confidence, believing that as long as they generated attention, the nature of their words didn't matter. Ratings were the currency, and shock value was the investment. But what some fail to realize is that there is always a breaking point. One moment where the very system that once protected them decides they are no longer worth the risk. At first, there may be silence. When a remark crosses the line, there is often a brief period where nothing happens, where it seems as if the usual cycle of outrage and distraction will continue as it always has. But behind the scenes, discussions begin. The weight of the word spoken is evaluated, and the potential consequences are measured. It is no longer just about audience engagement. It becomes a matter of liability. Public perception has a power that few anticipate until it turns against them. What was once seen as entertainment suddenly becomes a risk. Advertisers, sponsors, and executives pay close attention to the shifting tides, and when they sense trouble, their response is swift. The very networks that once championed controversy begin to distance themselves, not out of principle, but out of self-preservation. The audience, once seen as passive consumers, becomes an undeniable force. Social media erupts with reactions. Articles circulate and the conversation spreads beyond just the usual critics. People who had previously ignored such antics now take notice, and what might have been dismissed as just another shocking remark is suddenly being dissected on a much larger scale. It is in these moments that the illusion of invincibility shatters. The realization sets in that no one is untouchable, that even those who have been protected by their platforms can find themselves abandoned when they become more of a liability than an asset. The network, once an ally, now faces a choice: stand by controversy and risk the fallout, or cut ties and protect its own interests. The decision, when it comes, is rarely dramatic. There is no grand announcement, no lengthy justification. Instead, it happens quietly, almost clinically. A statement is released, carefully worded to acknowledge the situation while avoiding deeper accountability. Terms like reassessment and mutual agreement are used, but the message is clear. The association is over. What follows is a stark contrast to the confidence that once existed. The same machine that built a platform now moves on without hesitation. Viewers may debate, supporters may protest, but the decision is final. The momentum that once worked in favor of controversy now works against it, as each new development solidifies the reality that there is no return. For some, the aftermath is a wake-up call. For others, it is a bitter realization that they were never as untouchable as they believed. Either way, the lesson is clear. While controversy may bring temporary success, it is never a foundation strong enough to withstand the weight of accountability. Respect is not something that can be demanded. It is earned through actions, through integrity, and through the way one treats others. There are those who believe that status, influence, or a loud voice are enough to command respect, but time has proven that these things alone are not enough. Respect comes from the substance of one's words, from the consistency of one's character, and from the ability to engage in meaningful conversations without resorting to personal attacks or empty rhetoric. Too often, people mistake arrogance for confidence. They assume that by speaking over others, by dismissing opposing views with ridicule, or by constantly seeking conflict, they are displaying strength. But true strength is found in those who do not need to rely on theatrics to make a point. It is found in those who can stand their ground without resorting to insults, who can counter an argument with facts rather than emotions, and who understand that winning a debate is not about silencing others, but about proving one's position with undeniable truth. There is a certain irony in how those who belittle others so often find themselves facing the very consequences they once dismissed. They believe that they are immune to accountability, that they can act without repercussions simply because they have always gotten away with it before. But there comes a moment when their actions catch up to them, when the very behavior they encouraged becomes the reason they lose the platform they once took for granted. The public has a way of recognizing authenticity. People may be entertained by controversy for a time, but eventually they begin to see through the performance. They notice when someone's words are meant only to provoke rather than inform, when arguments lack depth and rely solely on spectacle. And once that realization sets in, respect is lost, not just from those who were targeted, but from the audience itself. When respect is lost, so is influence. No matter how large a platform may be, no matter how much reach someone has, it becomes meaningless when people no longer take them seriously. Their words, once powerful, now carry little weight. Their attempts to reclaim credibility are met with skepticism, as people remember not just what was said, but how it was said. The damage is not just to their reputation, it is to their entire ability to be seen as someone worth listening to. There is a lesson in all of this, one that has been taught time and time again. Those who seek to tear others down for their own gain will eventually find themselves in the same position. Those who fail to treat others with respect will, in time, lose the respect they once had. And those who believe they are untouchable will one day face the reality that no one is above accountability. Actions have consequences, and no one is exempt from that reality. There is a fundamental truth that many overlook. Power and influence are never permanent. They are privileges, not guarantees. The way one uses them determines whether they grow stronger over time or fade away when the weight of their own choices becomes too much to bear. Respect is not given freely, nor is it maintained without effort. It must be nurtured, protected, and reinforced through consistency and integrity. Those who mistake fear for respect, who assume that volume equates to authority, often learn too late that intimidation is not a substitute for credibility. And audience may be entertained by spectacle, but when the show ends, only substance remains. Every public figure, every person in a position of influence, reaches a moment where they must face the consequences of their words. The impact of what they say lingers long after the cameras stop rolling. What might have been dismissed in the past as entertainment or controversy eventually accumulates into a reputation, one that either strengthens their standing or erodes it entirely. The lesson is clear. Those who build their platform on division, mockery, and reckless rhetoric will eventually find themselves standing on unstable ground. When the foundation is weak, the collapse is inevitable. Those who believe they are untouchable often fall the hardest, not because of any external force, but because they underestimated the power of public perception and accountability. Integrity matters. Character matters. The way one treats others, especially when they disagree, is a reflection of who they truly are. People may tolerate arrogance for a time, but eventually they recognize when someone's words are empty. And once respect is lost, it is nearly impossible to regain. In the end, the downfall is not just about a single mistake or one moment of misjudgment. It is about a pattern of behavior finally catching up. It is about realizing too late that no one is above the very standards they